Hey guys, Dino here, and this is Watching Wrestling, where I watch wrestling and then I talk about it. I wanted to do a review for SmackDown Live, but with the promo on SmackDown between The Miz and Daniel Bryan, it seems like everybody is kind of focused on that. So instead of talking about SmackDown Live, which by the way was a really good show, go check that out, I'm going to talk about The Miz and Daniel Bryan on SmackDown. So first of all, I'm like 60% sure that this was a work. WWE now and then do a fantastic job in kind of separating between what's real and what's not. This promo is an example of that. Hell, I would even say that CM Punk's promo, the Pipe Bomb promo, would be an example of that. So here's the thing. I think the interaction between The Miz and Daniel Bryan was planned. I think somebody came up to Miz, just like they did to Punk. They gave him a mic and they said, hey, listen, go out there and just get everything you have off your chest. But to me, that's not a shoot. To me, that's a work. To me, a shoot is something that nobody is expecting. Bret Hart being screwed, that's a shoot. Nobody expected that, especially Bret Hart. Another example of a shoot would be Damien Sandow had a shoot. And this was a few years ago on Raw. It was like a Raw pre-show, and he goes onto the show. He picks up my mic and he says how ridiculous it was for him to be dressed up in these costumes. He felt like he was being underutilized. He feels like he was being made into a joke. And at first I thought this was a work, but because nothing came of it, they just kind of they didn't talk about it. They didn't use it. It just became nothing. So as far as The Miz and the Daniel Bryan thing is concerned, I guess we will find out next week whether it's a work or not. If they use it, it's a work. If they don't, it's a shoot. But I think SmackDown would be really stupid not to utilize, not to capitalize on this moment right now. So what happened on SmackDown was basically Bryan calls The Miz out for being a coward in the ring, for wrestling safe. And you may think, well, that kind of makes Bryan look like a douche. You know what I mean? Like for a GM to kind of criticize his wrestler for being safe in the ring, especially with this influx of injuries that have been going on the last few years, it's kind of ridiculous. But when you take into consideration Daniel Bryan's mindset on wrestling, like he made a name for himself in the independents, kind of risking everything, putting his body on the line. Like he did not wrestle safe. He put everything into that ring, because for him wrestling was not about money or fame. It was an art form. It was about expressing yourself, and everything that he did in the ring was just him expressing himself. So while it may be ridiculous for Bryan to call out The Miz for being safe, when you take into consideration Bryan's kind of come up, it makes sense for Bryan to say something like that. And unfortunately for Bryan, that mentality of putting everything you have in the ring, putting your all into a match, that mindset has a price. And unfortunately for Daniel Bryan, he's paying for that price right now. The Miz, his passion is more for the WWE, not necessarily for the wrestling. And what makes The Miz such a commodity for the WWE is that he is reliable. And The Miz brings this up, and he calls Bryan the coward for not wrestling. And Bryan says, if they would let him, he would. And I feel at that moment, right there, Miz really got going. And he tells Bryan that if he loves wrestling so much, why doesn't he quit? Why doesn't he go back to the indies and do the thing he loves? And I spoke earlier about blurring the lines between real and fake, and I think that's the point. That's exactly what happened at that point when The Miz says, why don't you go back to wrestling? And then Bryan says, if I could, I would. And Bryan walking out, I think, added to that. Personally, here's the thing. Personally, I think Bryan walking out was just him sensing that this promo that the Miz was doing was becoming too much about Daniel Bryan. It was becoming too much about him, and he wanted the Miz to focus on himself in the Intercontinental Championship. That's what I think. Or maybe him walking out was planned, or maybe he was pissed. Here's the thing. I don't know what happened. And I don't think I want to know. But I do know this. This was one of the best things I saw from The Miz in a while. And I like The Miz. The last few years I've come to appreciate what he's been doing. You know, he plays his role well, and I think he gets the best out of the people he rivals with. The reason I think this is a work was because SmackDown needs superstars. John Cena is good, but he's not going to be around forever. AJ Styles is great, but he's old. Dean Ambrose is okay, but I feel like the last few months he's been really bland. These last few months. SmackDown needs to stir things up. That's what they need to do. And they need to have people talking. And guess what? We're talking.